Have you ever noticed that the more you think, the less you speak? That the more aware you become, the harder it is to relate to others? It's not just in your head. Society has always had a strange relationship with deep thinkers, not because they're wrong, but because they challenge what feels safe. From Buddha to Kierkegaard, from Hypatia to Simone Weil, those who dared to think differently were often dismissed, isolated, or misunderstood. Not because they lacked clarity, but because they saw too much. Why does this happen? Why does depth of thought often lead to a life of solitude? The answer isn't in the thinker. It's in the way we're wired. You see, when you meet someone stronger than you, it doesn't threaten your sense of self. You admire them. You may even be inspired. When you meet someone richer, you might feel envy, sure, but rarely resentment. But when you encounter someone who sees through the noise, who questions what everyone else accepts, something shifts. Psychologists call this existential mirroring. Deep thinkers don't just offer new ideas, they reflect back your uncertainties, and people don't like their illusions shattered. Even in silence, the thinker can feel like a threat, because their presence suggests there's more than this. And that simple truth, it makes people uncomfortable. But why is it that intellectual depth causes more tension than any other form of excellence? Because intelligence isn't external, it's internal. It's not about what you wear or own. It's about how you perceive. And perception is tied to identity. The moment someone questions the world differently, they question your world, your beliefs, your assumptions, your comfort zone, and the human brain. It doesn't like that. Neuroscience shows that when people feel intellectually challenged, the same brain region lights up as when they feel physically threatened. The amygdala. Yes, truth can trigger fear. Why? Because we evolved not to seek truth, but to survive. For most of history, safety meant belonging, and belonging meant thinking like the group. Question too much, and you risk being cast out. In tribal terms, that meant death. So our minds developed a preference, belonging over understanding. That's why deep thinkers are often labeled weird, difficult, or out of touch. Not because they are, but because they make others question what they'd rather not. And in group settings, this fear multiplies. In one-on-one conversations, thinkers can be intriguing. But in a crowd, their presence shifts the balance. Social status becomes fragile. People fear looking less smart, less sharp, less in control. So they mock, they minimize. Not because they see clearly, but because their ego needs protection. It's easier to laugh at the thinker than to listen. Now add modern life to the equation. A world run by algorithms, a world that favors dopamine over depth, where clickbait wins over contemplation. The deeper your thoughts, the harder they are to compress into 30-second content. And so, simplicity goes viral. Nuance gets ignored. We reward confidence over curiosity, charisma over content, echo chambers over evolution. So where does that leave deep thinkers? Lonely? Sometimes. Misunderstood? Often. But also free. Because while society may resist the truth, thinkers live in pursuit of it. And that pursuit, though isolating, is noble. As the philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre once said, if you're lonely when you're alone, you're in bad company. Deep thinkers don't need crowds, they need clarity. They don't seek validation, they seek vision. So if you're one of them, remember this. Your silence in a loud room is not weakness, it's wisdom. Your discomfort in shallow conversations is not arrogance, it's awareness. And your isolation, it's not exile, it's elevation. Because in a world that fears depth, the thinker is not broken. The world is simply not ready.